Hello, business building warrior. Welcome to Silent Sales Machine Radio. I hope you enjoy listening to this podcast as much as we enjoy making these episodes for you. If you're new around here, this is the show that features hundreds of interviews with the students of the proven Amazon course, which has become the flagship training course in the industry, as evidenced by the thousands of posts in our free Facebook group of people talking about the results they're getting, the hundreds of interviews that you've heard on this show, and the fact that we've been doing this longer than anyone. Speaking of which, we've got our 12th annual Amazon Seller Conference coming up very soon. It's more than just Amazon now. Of course, it's multiple streams of e commerce strategies that will be taught at this event, but it's also the longest running Amazon Seller Conference in the industry. I'm talking about the Proven Conference. There's a link, of course, at silentjimdotcom to pretty much everything we're going to talk about today, including a link to this podcast episode. So any resources that are mentioned, you can jump over there and see those easily. But the conference is coming up in Orlando, May 23rd through 25th, 2024. The website is theprovenconference.com. I just want to encourage you, if you haven't locked in your live stream access, which also gets you all the event recordings, over 45 breakout sessions, almost 50 sessions scheduled at this point. It's going to be incredible. Get onto the website, see what all is there. For a buck or two per session, you're going to be able to get the cutting edge content that we're bringing to this community. And something I love about this event, I think the reason it's had such longevity, there's several reasons, but one of them is it's not a bunch of outside speakers that you can pretty much go hear anytime you want to hear, look them up on YouTube or buy their book. That's not how we do conferences. The way we do it is the successful students from our community who are succeeding and building beautiful businesses, we put them on stage. Many times they're not professional speakers, but they all have a great story and they share exactly how they've done what they've done. So imagine getting to meet dozens of people, hundreds of people like that. That's what our event is all about. New sellers are completely welcome. If you're new and clueless and you know nothing about e commerce, you're still trying to find your way, we'd love to have you. If you've been doing it a while and you're looking to ramp up and scale, we'd love to have you. Join us in Orlando. There's still a handful of general admission tickets left. VIP is sold out. But if you can't join us in Orlando, May 23rd through 25th, get the recordings, get live stream access, lock in your discount prices before the event starts. All details are on the website. Today's episode continues a theme that you've heard on a good handful of episodes lately, where we discuss some of the unusual strategies that we teach here to our new selling students that are seeing incredible results for those students. To our knowledge, we're the only Amazon seller community in the world that teaches these strategies. Of course, the replens model originated in this community, and we've been teaching it for many, many years. Many of our students have gone on to build incredible businesses. And that model basically entails helping fill the underserved shelf space at Amazon, finding test worthy products that you can sell on Amazon, a handful at a time. Because remember, around here, we're all about minimizing the risk for new sellers. We want you to get started with minimal risk, minimal investment, minimal time required, start seeing proof of concept, and then slowly scale your way into the more substantial models that require a little more work, a little more risk, a little more time, a little more systems, right? So when we start you out, it's very low hanging fruit opportunities. And the good news is those opportunities are abundant because Amazon simply continues to expand and grow and serve more territories, serve more buying customers. And you can get in there, use our training, and start discovering some of these underserved ASINs. And today we're going to spend some time with Brian and Robin Joy Olson. They're two great coaching leaders on our team. If you weren't aware, we've got about 60 coaches. They're divided up into a few teams. We have coaching leaders over each of those teams. Brian and Robin Joy, who you hear on our show about once a week or so around here, they've created some incredible content for our community. Of course, they've built a beautiful business, as have all of our coaches using the systems we teach here. But they also break down the concepts in such a unique way. And I just love the dynamic, the two of them hanging out, discussing these strategies together and sharing them with you. So today we're going to dive into more of the above buy box strategy, what it means. It's a slightly different take, a slightly different vantage point, and sometimes just hearing it from a few different people explain it a few different ways really makes things start to click. But if you'd like to see 160 plus examples of the products that I'm personally selling at prices way above buy box, there'll be a link in today's show note where you can go for free and see exactly how I use Keepa to find hundreds of thousands of potential ASINs that we could test against, how we decide which ones to test against, and then I show you proof of how it's working and where it's working. Again, 160 examples. If you want to write the link down, if you're somewhere where you can jot it down, of course, it'll be in the show notes as well, but you can go to silentjim.com/BB70, BB as in buy box, 70. You see, I'm not concerned about the buy box at all. On these ASINs, I sell well above buy box. I teach you how to recognize those ASINs where that's even a possibility and how to send in a couple of units and test against it. That's the strategy we're going to be spending some time talking about today. And I love how Brian and Rob and Joy presented almost as the cure for one of the most common ailments that face Amazon sellers. So if you find yourself scratching your head saying, I can't find anything profitable, where's all the good inventory? Instead of looking for good, profitable inventory, maybe you should be looking for underserved, test-worthy ASINs instead. And that's the conversation today. So enjoy this fresh perspective on a very popular topic around here these days with Brian and Robin Joy Olson. Take it away, guys.
Welcome back to Silent Sales Machine Radio. We are your co-hosts. I'm Brian.
And I'm Robin Joy.
Pardon our voice, our sound today. We're both
a little bit congested.
On the mend from some sickness that's been going around. But, mentally, 100%.
Well, some might argue, but
100% of normal.
There you go.
Okay.
And we still can't do math, so
yeah. So we're not gonna really attempt to do math today. At least if I do, stop me.
Okay. Yeah. We try to control each other there.
So we got two great questions we want to dive into today. But before we get into them, there's the little story that we want to share with you that kind of will help us illustrate at least.
This story.
In the 18th century, scurvy was a real problem for sailors who were on boats all the time.
Yeah, for hundreds of years before that.
Yeah. Many hundreds of years. And as we know now, scurvy is actually caused by a lack of vitamin C. Mm-hmm. And the deaths are just horrible and painful from the disease that is scurvy. Not only the physical toll on your body, but also in your mind.
Yeah.
So not something that you would like to get or observe someone getting.
No.
Right? But the scientists and doctors of the time were probably thinking that there was some major treatment that had to be figured out. So that they could treat these these folks who were afflicted by this disease.
I'm sure they were trying all kinds of major adjustments to try to help people.
Oh, we must need, think of it at the time. We must need some major, new
change
mRNA vaccine to avoid this.
Whatever.
Yeah. Anyway, they finally figured out that just a tiny bit of lemon juice, basically vitamin C, could make the whole problem disappear, right? So we're telling this story to illustrate how just one small change to a process can make everything look completely different, not only in your health, but potentially also in your business.
Yes, that's true. So we often get asked this question a lot. I'm looking, Robin, you told me to find some ASINs that I can test. I'm looking at ASINs. I'm seeing what they sell for. By that, they usually mean what the buy box currently is or what the average buy box is. And I just can't find any source that I can buy those where that price will be profitable for me. I can't find a cost low enough to give me the profit that I need. And what we often answer to this is flip that upside down.
Mm-hmm.
The cost is what the cost is. If I buy something that costs $10, I'm not going to find some magical source where I can buy it for $2. It's just not going to happen. It costs what it costs. What I do have control over is what I sell it for. So I can see if I can sell it at a profit. That's the whole point of the test, right? I know what it costs. What do I need to make it worth it to me to replenish it? Then I have to test it and see, does it give me profit at that cost? Can I get a price that's profitable? We don't know until we test it, right?
Well, we know sometimes in advance, especially if you're flipping the script, right? Turning it upside down and saying, okay, what do I need to sell it for? Where is the historical sales of this item? Sometimes the historical sales of that item and the price, and let's say whether that's third-party FBA pricing or even the buy box, can make that a profitable opportunity for you.
But remember,
on
we
paper.
only know historical pricing. We don't know actual sales, what price those actual sales.
Right, that's what I like.
Or- yeah, that's
on
what-
paper, it looks good.
Yeah, on paper
Right.
it looks good.
Yeah.
Right.
Um,
Well, tell me then, Brian, explain how that can happen. If it's, I can see this is what it costs me when I go to buy it. That
Mhm.
must be what it's selling for, right? So why would I test it for more?
well, I don't know that what I can buy it for must mean that that's what it's selling for.
Hmm.
Okay, if you're comfortable with the going rate or whatever it is, like if you're seeing the price is pretty consistent across multiple stores
Hmm.
or retail outlets, then okay, this is the price. I don't need to look any further to this whole, there must be a source out there with a much better price. There must be a wholesale source out there.
Mhm.
There must be this source out there that's at a better price. There might or might not be. You just don't know.
Right.
Right? So when you flip it upside down, you're going to have some that do go ahead and meet your tests, become a qualified ASIN
Mhm.
because it kind of meets all the checkpoints in terms of being able to protect your capital, a good sales velocity, and potential profit. But how do we know how much more we could potentially sell it for? Or if, what that price is going for today or historically is barely profitable, how do I know that I could potentially test it for higher and make more money? Is what I think what you're trying to ask me.
Well, I only know if I test it.
You
Right?
only know if you test it, but how would it be possible?
Yes. How would it be possible?
So 2 things about that.
Okay. Let's make sure we're getting to the same place here.
Mhm. The first thing is that we talked about this last year at the Proven Conference, this thing, the multidimensional buy box,
Mhm.
right? The buy box is this regional phenomenon that is, I wouldn't call it a phenomenon. It's
Well,
just, compared to maybe people who've
It's
been
a
doing
dynamic.
this, it's a dynamic. There we go. Yeah. And it's not always different, but there are many instances where it is.
Many
different.
instances.
And so we're looking to see, is it different based on maybe where my inventory is located? Now, unfortunately, we can't control where inventory goes, but we can test and
Mhm.
test some units and see if the multidimensional buy box might work in our favor.
Okay, so tell me a little bit more about this multidimensional buy box. What's multidimensional about it?
So, well, we talked about the regionality of the buy box a minute ago. So to me, that's what there are multiple dimensions of that buy box. So if I'm looking at I don't know, a capo for a guitar, let's say,
Guitar break.
and I happen to live in Miami, and I'm looking at Amazon in Miami, the consumer side, and I go find this particular guitar part, and I look it up, and it says price is $20.
Hmm.
Someone who is in Seattle or Maine or Texas or San Diego or Montana or Salt Lake, when they look that exact same ASIN up on the consumer side of Amazon, they may see a different price in the buy box if that listing has a buy box.
Yeah, and a featured price may be different if it doesn't have a buy box.
Mhm.
That is absolutely true. And we started seeing this. We started seeing this when we were coaching people across the world,
Mhm.
right? And they would say, "Hey, look at this. Look at this with me. I'm not sure about this ASIN." And I say, "That's interesting. Let me look at it on my system and see." And we got two different prices.
Mhm.
If I order it, it's this. So we started doing some research, and this is not new. I mean, this has been around the community, but we've started doing some research, and we could see, oh, look, for you can get it in 2 days for $12.95 from this seller, XXX. But when I look for me in Denver, it's going to cost me $10.95, and I have YYY as the seller in the buy box.
Mhm.
So that buy box that you see, that pink line on the history in the Keepa chart, is only one of them. And remember, those of you who have repricers know that buy box is going up and down and up and down and up and down, as are all the prices all day long. When you look at one day in the history, you're looking at one point in time, and that's usually the lowest price that a buy box was on that day. So keep that in mind. There's much more potential than what the buy box is. That's the very minimum conservative, right?
Yeah, I think the short version of that story potentially is that we don't know how Keepa is representing themselves when they are going to scrape all the information
Right.
off of that listing page and then put that into their database, then that to turn around and display to us what was the buy box. Maybe
Mhm.
they're looking in Seattle. I don't, I have not confirmed that. And I don't know that we know the answer, but what we do know is that different parts of the country, different parts of the world, depending on where you're looking, probably not different parts of the world, probably just different parts of the country,
I'd say probably different parts of the world.
depending on where you're having it shipped.
Yeah.
Yeah. That buy box can be different.
The point here is there is an up and down difference in the buy box all day long during time. It goes up and down over time, whether that's, days or weeks or months, it goes up and down. It also goes up and down over geographical locations.
Yep.
Because there are so many warehouses anymore, there are so many different options for different people to get different inventory near them. It may be that someone else's inventory is near someone who's buying over there. Someone else, my inventory is near someone else over there. So I can't really tell by just looking as if I'm going to buy it. We often change the zip code to see if it's selling differently in a different place in the country.
I'm going to unearth a term that I think has been mothballed. Or maybe,
are you going to make up words again?
No, I'm not going to make anything up. A few years ago, there was the term going around, the underserved ASINs is how we look for potentially profitable items to resell on Amazon. To me, when I think today, I still think of underserved ASINs, but what that means to me is this. If there are 150 different distribution / fulfillment centers across the United States that inventory is being stored in and shipped to customers out of, then unless I have hundreds or thousands of units in stock saturated across all of those distribution centers, and it's a fast moving product, it's going to be hard for me to saturate the system, right? The Amazon warehousing system. So what that means is that certain locations will be out of those products.
Right.
And so if I send my product in when one of those locations is out, remember we've said before, Amazon is a logistics company, right? They know where they need to put products based on customer demand.
Yeah.
And if one of those warehouses happens to be out of that product and you are sending it in, there is a possibility that you could get a preference for your inventory to go to where it's needed, right? Now, if there is, let's say, Amazon who can saturate the system, they can't keep everything fully stocked all the time.
Right.
We see this,
there aren't enough sellers. There are not enough of us to give them enough inventory to keep everything stocked.
Not
all
only,
the time.
I just meant Amazon in general as the reseller. Yeah. As you'll notice, as we'll get into point number 2, and many of the charts that Jim posts lately are like, hey, Amazon can't keep this thing in stock. Great. If I can send my inventory in, and that can be directed to a fulfillment center of which we have no control. I don't want to give anyone the false impression that you can control
over where
your inventory goes. You can't. This is why we test, right? We test.
You can see where it is if you have inventory in it.
And which brings a whole new meaning to being in the game. Right. When you see where your inventory is and why your inventory sold for more than the buy box looks like to you, well, you put in the zip code where that inventory is and see what that listing looks like.
Right.
Does the buy box look different there?
So when I'm shopping, I'm looking for what it's going. I'm looking to see what the price is for me, but I'm also looking to see how can I get it the fastest, right? So many times I look at an ASIN. Most shoppers don't call them ASINs, but I look because I'm going to buy something and I see it's going to be a couple of days. Even maybe the buy box may say it's a couple of days or it doesn't have a buy box. And some of these are 2 or 3 days, 3 or 4 days. It may take weeks for me to get it. So, and Jim posted in the Facebook group just recently a great example of this, where everybody was going to be more than 3 or 4 days, except him. He's the highest price by almost twice as much, I think. And but he was in the buy box and he had the Prime badge and he was the one that you were going to get it within 24 to 48 hours.
Yep.
Right?
Yeah.
Well, obviously, I'm going to choose that one almost every time.
You would, but not everyone necessarily would.
No,
I mean, there are many,
but
we know people who wouldn't.
We do know people who would never.
Yeah.
But many people are going to choose that one. And many times, Amazon's going to offer that one up to you as the featured offer, even though the other prices are much lower. I saw an example of that just today. Should have grabbed a picture of it, but I was in the middle of something else, where the price, what I was looking at was $12, $13. There was a price for $2.98. It was not the featured offer. It was not in the buy box. The reason I believe is because it was about 8 days down the road before you could get it. It was FBA, but they still didn't get the buy box. So sometimes it does not matter how low your price is. To some people, you're not going to be the featured price.
Well, we know that price is usually the number one factor. If everything else is equal, the number two factor is speed of delivery.
I have seen over and over and so many times that everything else is not equal. And that's what we're looking at now that we haven't looked at in years past. Hasn't really been the case. But Amazon has grown so big and so fast, and their warehouses, their logistics have grown so fast. In the last couple of years, they've built a lot of warehouses, and that makes the whole picture different. And now I just don't see nearly as many that I can get within 48 hours, 24 to 48 hours, as I used to see. Almost all of them, almost all sellers were in that point. But now Amazon starts bringing it to be available as soon as you ship it sometimes. So of course it's not going to be available in 24 to 48 hours to the customer, but they can certainly buy it if they like that price. That's why we've pretty much, moved away from using Repricer so much, because it can't tell that we are not within the prime window yet, right?
I was just thinking about how I felt when I logged into the Repricer the other day. It was like blowing some dust off of this thing. And I'm like, when we dig into the use of the Repricer, it has our frequency and how much we're using has gone down a lot. And I partially blame Repricers for the race to the bottom that has been happening in such dramatic fashion over the last 4 or 5 years, of which I contributed to.
Yeah.
Right?
I'm not sure it's the Repricer's fault. They gave us what we asked for.
You're right. They did.
That's what was working for a long time.
It just all turned into had unintended consequences.
Yeah.
Right. And so anyway, there are two reasons. Yes. How can we sell it for a higher price, and how would that be possible? Number one, multidimensional buy box, which is a regional, what did you call it? Not phenomenon, but
a dynamic.
A regional dynamic. Yes. Good one. And
a time dynamic.
And a time dynamic. Yeah. Obviously, when I'm shopping now, then I know how Amazon works and how Keepa works and all that. I'm looking to see whenever. It's funny when I'm going shopping, I'm like, is this a recent spike in price, and will it go back down? Should I check back on it in 2 days? Or if it's not about price for me, it's about time, then I'm just like looking for, can I get it in same day? Can I get it next day? Can I get it within 48 hours? Yes, that's the price I'll pay.
Because that's what Amazon has trained us as consumers to expect.
Yep.
Time, not price, but time.
Yep.
So we can obviously capitalize on that. And that's what we need to try to do. Because if we don't, well, I'm going to get to that segue in just a moment. I want to just say one more thing about this point. How do we know if we can take advantage of a multidimensional buy box and time instead of price as a factor?
Yep.
How do we know?
Test more ASINs. All
Test
right.
more-
See you, everybody.
We're not done yet. Don't leave, everybody. We're still, but it's true. Just test it. And remember, I don't know if I want to test it. I can't see anything that proves that. You're not going to until you test. But just remember, it's just a test. It's just test small. 2 or 3, it will do it. Test small. The more you test, the more you'll find that become replenishable. The more you'll find that you can get those profits that you couldn't prove before you tested it, but you can still get them, right?
And one of the things I really like about the way we are approaching our replen hunting or test-worthy ASIN hunting these days is that the buy box is usually the worst case scenario, right?
Yeah.
That there's only one other worst case scenario beyond that, and that's if it happens to go against us in some unexpected
Right.
fashion, right? With
Right.
some
Something-
unprecedented event happens.
Yes.
Right. And that happens all the time.
Something happens to that ASIN.
I say unprecedented happens all the time. When I mean unprecedented happens to that ASIN.
right.
Happens to all.
We
a lot
may
of
have been
ASINs all the
selling on
time.
it for years,
Yeah.
and then something all of a sudden happened. Yeah.
Yeah.
Anything can happen to any ASIN. That's why we want lots of them. In case something happens to one, we got plenty more.
There's this instant gratification piece that the consumers are, married to these days.
Mhm.
Maybe not everybody, but there are a big
Oh,
chunk
no,
of them
of course
are.
not.
They're like, I want this today, I want it tomorrow, or I want it within 2 days.
Amazon shoppers. If you're an Amazon shopper, you probably like the time thing,
Mhm.
right?
Absolutely.
That's why you're an Amazon shopper.
And there are over 200 million Prime subscribers in the United States.
Well, that's who we are. I
Mhm.
mean, that's what we've learned.
This is your
and
audience.
Amazon's done a great job of getting us there.
Mm-hmm.
Now let's capitalize on that. Make small adjustments. We cannot do anything about what it costs. It costs what it costs. What we can do is test to see if we can get what we need to make that cost turn into profits for us. Some will, some won't.
Mm-hmm.
Move on.
Next.
Next.
So empirical evidence or anecdotal evidence, even like that Jim has been showing, and we've shared a few, and many others have shared their experience with the above the buy box
Mhm.
situation. This to me is just a slight tweak
Mhm.
in the way that we approach the Amazon business. Not that much different than adding a couple of teaspoons of vitamin C to your diet every day to avoid this terrible, terrible disease.
Yeah, the scurvy.
And,
yeah.
and in this case, the
Don't
terrible,
get scurvy.
the terrible, terrible disease is chasing the buy box.
Yeah, we don't need to chase the buy box
Mhm.
anymore. So let's talk about that a little bit. Let's don't talk about the buy box a little bit. Let's talk about what we're doing instead. You said you weren't using a repricer much anymore, and I know that we don't. We really don't, and it's not something that we get into a lot with our clients anymore.
Yeah.
Not anymore. We used to, but things are changing, evolving all the time, evolving.
Mm-hmm.
And I've said it before, this is revolutionary. What Jim has been teaching us about testing to see what kind of profits you can get that are higher than the buy box. You need to have some balance if you're going to take, if you're going to do some, unusual things. We've put together a 3-step check that kind of help you get that started.
Mm-hmm.
But where we're going, Brian?
Not only get that started, I mean, the 3-step check, I was telling one of our coaching clients earlier this week, that's still the exact same process that you and I and our VA use
It
today.
is.
Like, we're not so advanced that we don't, that we just ignore capital protection.
Right.
We're not.
However, we do have a book of business,
Yeah.
and we do take one or two, a little bit
This-
higher risks once in a while, see if we can do it. But we built a foundation first so that we were not taking all of our inventory capital and risking it.
It's calculated risks. We know what our guidelines are. We know when we're going to go outside those guidelines.
Mm-hmm.
When you don't have a book of business yet, you don't know what your guidelines are.
Right.
You don't know
will
what has been
build
working for
those
you.
yourself.
Yeah.
Right.
So, okay.
All right.
Second question.
Second question.
The second question, and I get this frequently for clients who are coming in after they already have a book of business, or they're like halfway building,
Mhm.
halfway to a decent book of business. And the question is like, wow, I'm just not making as much money as I thought I would. What do I need to change?
Mhm. And what do
Okay.
you see a lot? Not always. I mean, none of these examples are
Yeah,
exclusive.
it's not across the board.
Right, exactly,
But
yeah.
what we see frequently, what I see frequently is this. We have a warehouse style of pricing or repricing
Mhm.
with a boutique style of business.
Yes.
So, it's one thing, and to me, warehouse style pricing is chasing the buy box on those super fast moving ASINs where you're trying to sell 50 or 100 of them, right, every month.
Mhm.
That's like, you're not going to make that much money, but it does move inventory and it helps pay the bills. And so you can have some of that for sure.
Mhm.
If you only have 30 or 40, ASINs on your replens list,
Mhm.
and you are doing your pricing at warehouse level pricing,
Mhm.
well, of course, you're not going to make as much money as you thought you would.
Right. So think about that. So I have 30 or 40 ASINs,
Mm-hmm.
and I'm trying to stay as low as possible. So I'm making thin margins,
Mm-hmm.
and I am, but I want to keep my risk low. So I don't want to put in a whole lot of inventory well, then those thin margins aren't going to do me a whole lot of good. I'm not going to make a lot of money because I don't have enough of it.
Right.
And I don't have enough ASINs to spread that across.
The only way that the low margin play works is with volume. And if you don't have volume to back it up, then of course you're not going to make that much money.
So couldn't I have, instead of having volume in one ASIN, I could have volume in ASINs.
This is what I'm talking about. Yeah, it's not just.
So that's where you sit.
It's just not. It's not just in one ASIN. Like, let's continue to build our book of business. Potentially change our strategy about how we are repricing these items. And if you've got items that only sell at the buy box, and this happens a lot,
sure.
right?
We have lots of ASINs.
We have lots of ASINs sell at buy box, but even the buy box number is good enough for us, right?
Yeah.
Right. Okay.
Sometimes the buy box is profitable, and that's okay too.
Yeah. Sometimes the buy box is profitable. Yeah. What a concept.
What we're trying to do is open it up and allow you to take advantage of more ASINs that might not work on that strategy.
Right. So the problem isn't necessarily that we only have 40 ASINs.
Mm-hmm.
Right. The challenge, and it's not the problem, but the challenge for us is to, if we're going to produce the desired profit level with those 30 or 40 ASINs, then we need to take a more boutique style approach.
Mm-hmm.
So we can test ASINs potentially selling higher than the buy box. Are we going to sell 40 of them a month? Probably not. Are we going to sell 4, 6, 8 of them a month? Maybe. And I would take 30, 40, 50 more of those to keep my inch deep, mile wide, rather than trying to find 2 or 3 that I can sell 300 a month of.
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah,
absolutely. Yeah. So that's a realistic goal, to find more ASINs that have fewer sales but higher profits. And the way we figure that out is to test and see if they'll sell for that. If they'll sell at the buy box and that's a profitable number, that's great too. But why not test them to see if they'll sell higher?
Another thing that lends itself to the warehouse style pricing is this concept I mentioned earlier of instant gratification. We like it as shoppers,
right?
But it's it's in all of us to some degree, even when we're the seller. So when our inventory shows up as available and it hasn't sold within a day, we want instant gratification. We want to sell it now. So what do? We lower our price to where the buy box is as far as we know it, and we sell the item. And we are leaving potentially profit on the table when that happens.
Yeah, and think about what we're doing there. I mean, Amazon has obviously trained us all well. We have to resist as sellers, right? Because when Amazon makes it available as soon as I get it to UPS, or as soon as UPS comes and picks it up, and Amazon makes it available, which happens a lot for a lot of sellers and a lot of ASINs, then that's when we start feeling, okay, a customer can buy it right now, and they're not buying it. They're not buying it. They're not buying it. And a week goes by. It hasn't even gotten to Amazon yet, but they're not buying it. And so then, it goes an FC transfer. And there's another week goes by, and I still can't sell it. But no customer has yet seen it within a 48-hour period that they can even buy it. You haven't gotten a buy box because somebody else is available sooner than you in a lot of those cases. But you want to sell it. So you're chasing that buy box. You're going, oh, well, it won't sell at that price. But we have to learn to look at all the pieces of the pie. And that's why when we do the 4-week test, we test it at a high price for at least a week at a time. But that week starts after it's available to at least someone somewhere within the prime window, within 24 to 48 hours.
And just to say, like, the 4-week tests, not perfect. The 3-step check is not perfect either.
No.
Right? We were talking about the multidimensional buy box. Yeah. So we are testing our price, a high price, when that item is available for someone, when it shows up in our available column. It could be in North Carolina.
Right.
But maybe in North Carolina, there's plenty of stock. And so we're not even getting close to the buy box, or, whatever would allow us to sell it for above the buy box. And so then we lower our price the next week. By then, something is available, let's say in Dallas. But little did we know, we potentially could have sold that item for our originally high price in Dallas.
Yep. But we were too anxious.
By that time, a week in, we have lowered our price to our next stopping point. our
Right.
next testing point, I should say. And so, yeah, it's not perfect.
Yeah, and when Jim does it, he waits even
He
longer.
just-
He'll
he
just,
just leaves
sit
it
it
out
there
there.
for 30 days. So
And you could make a
there-
good argument for that. Why,
you
the reason why.
absolutely could.
Yeah.
You absolutely could. So that's why we say Path to 100 ASINs, our workshop.
Hmm.
There's a reason we don't call it the Path to 100 ASINs.
Right.
We call it a path.
Yeah.
There are so many good things to learn from this community.
Hmm.
You'll find your own way. And there are ways to experiment and see what's going to work for you. We get a little complicated sometimes on this podcast because we're trying to describe things. But what we want you to take away from this is don't get too anxious to lower your price. Try to be patient. Give it a little bit of time. And what makes it easier to tolerate that time is to have your pipeline full, have inventory always going in. So once it starts selling, there's always something selling and you're not focused on that. It's tough in the beginning when you're trying to fill up that pipeline.
Yep. We're all looking for the results as quickly as we can get them.
Yeah.
And the reality is, I think that turning your money in 6 weeks is still a phenomenally
Oh my
fast
gosh.
time frame.
If you turn,
And
yeah,
You don't have to turn it in 6 days.
right.
You can turn it in 6 weeks, and you can do that 8-9 times a year. That's still a really good
hmm
option, right?
Wonderful.
Yeah.
Better than any other business I've seen.
Mhm.
It's the place to start, as far as I'm concerned. If you are going to start any business, that's the place to start and grow from there. Start making money the easy way 1st.
Mhm.
Mm-hmm.
All
All
right. I do. I have a quote for us today.
Do you?
Are you shocked?
I'm amazed.
One of my favorite authors, Jen Sincero, has a quote from her You Are a Badass book.
Mhm.
Goes like this: indecision is one of the most popular tricks for staying stuck within the boundaries of what's safe and familiar.
Mm,
Well, I haven't decided yet.
yeah.
Oh,
Well, as soon as I get this figured out, maybe I'll.
I'm not convinced.
Yeah.
I-
Well, I'm gonna
Yeah.
try this one and see
Mhm.
what happens. And
Mm-hmm.
yeah. Well, I'm as soon as this gets in place and this gets in place, then I'll be ready to go.
The whole getting ready to get ready thing.
Getting ready to get ready to get
Mhm.
ready.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Basically, commit. If you commit and you are committed, and failure's not an option, I want to see you in Orlando for failure's not an option. Then you will figure this out. There is no doubt in my mind. If you approach this business, if you get off the indecision train,
Mhm.
approach the business with a failure is not an option, you will figure it out. That's what everyone who has been successful here, they didn't usually, most of the time, you don't just get lucky here in the Amazon business.
Right.
It
Right.
happens
You gotta try
because
some
of,
things.
yes,
Try
relentless
some
pursuit.
other things. Relentless pursuit.
Mhm.
That's right.
So when you're ready for relentless pursuit, make the decision, decide, right? And by the way, as a famous Rush song says, choosing not to decide is still a choice.
Still a choice.
Right?
Oh dear, here we go.
Yeah. But once you've made the choice, then,
Mhm.
and if you are committed, you're going to see it through to the end, then see it through to the end, and you will find success. I have no doubt.
We believe in you. We've seen it 100 times. We've seen it hundreds of times.
Mhm.
You can do it too.
Yep.
It's on you. We figured out the how. Put yourself in the spot that's doing the how, and you're gonna find success.
All right. So when we're trying to fill up the pipe, because
Yeah.
we want to keep the sales going, what do we need to do?
Test more.
We have to
ASINs.
test more ASINs. Test it. Oh, there was one thing I forgot.
Oh,
Back up. You had a talking point up here that was about when you're testing
Mhm.
that in the beginning, the shipments, you're doing these
Oh,
once
yeah.
a week, like batches of sending an inventory of your tests. And for the first 6-8 weeks, usually all you have is tests because you won't have
That's all.
real
I don't have really anything else to do. I don't have any repricing to do because nothing's there yet.
Right. It takes time for the pipe to get full of water. Sort of like you're on that water
I
pump.
haven't found out if any of them are going to be replenishable or not.
If you're on that manual water pump with the well, you got to pump that
Yep.
thing like 5, 6, 7 times before water starts coming out. Same sort of thing when you're sending in your inventory. And so you send, you're not getting any results yet.
That's what it feels like.
That's
because
what
we're
it feels
impatient.
like.
But
Yes.
it really is a matter of just a few weeks.
Instant gratification, right? So after a while, though, you will start finding those ASINs that are replenishable for you.
Mhm.
They will start getting
One or two
mixed
at first.
mixed into your weekly
more
shipments.
later, right?
And then eventually, the amount of replenishable items you're sending in will be greater than the amount of tests that you're sending in.
Yes.
This is when the hockey stick thing happens.
Magic happens when you have more replens than tests. If you're testing consistently. Keep testing. But more replens than tests in your shipment is something magic starts happening there.
Yep.
You're right.
Right.
Hockey stick turns up.
So
that's when it starts really making sense.
That's where I meant to go before I said, so when we're waiting and we keep just sending in these tests, what do we got to do?
Test more ASINs.
We got to go find some more ASINs to test. All right, let's go find some.
All right, let's do it.
Thanks everyone. See you soon.
Hey, thanks for joining us for today's episode. But before we go, I've got a special guest we're going to spend a couple minutes with. Of course, I'm talking about Mr. Jeff Schick of jeffschick.com. He always has some great legal and Amazon policy advice and tips for us. What do you got for us today, Jeff?
Thanks for having me back. All right. So what we're talking about today is checking receipts. So when you're leaving a store, you always want to check your receipts. There's two things, and I can say it's happened to me myself when I went outsourcing to do some YouTube videos a couple months back. One is the cashier forgot to scan an item. Well, I had no proof of purchase because I didn't pay for it. So if by the time I got home, I realized I had to go back to the store and buy the item. Wasted gas, and I think it was Marshall's, so I spent more money in gas than the item cost. But it was, but obviously it's worth it for the integrity point of view. So one is getting that receipt is important to make sure to check your items, make sure that everything you purchased is on there, because just because you went and bought 17, pairs of sneakers, if you only paid for 15, and if you send 17 into Amazon, they're not going to account for 2 of them. They're not going to say, well, 15 is close enough to 17. They're just going to say, okay, well, you can't prove the authenticity of those 2 sneakers. So you want to make sure, one, that all the quantities are correct and that all the products that you purchased are on the receipt. Second thing is you want to look at that receipt and make sure the details are correct for the store. So we've been seeing in our practice a lot of receipts coming in lately that are either missing phone numbers or addresses. So like there's some stores out there, the receipt has everything. It's got the UPC, it's got the logo, it's got the name, and then it'll just say like 123 Main Street, and then Anytown, USA, 00000, because somebody forgot to set up.
Right.
Yeah, and someone forgot to set up the cash register. So it doesn't have the details. And so when Amazon gets this, they're like, well, this doesn't tell us what store you bought it from because it's missing the address or it's missing the phone number. We've also seen receipts where it has the logo and then it'll just say store number 953. And then it'll say, Atlanta, Georgia. And then that's it. It doesn't say what the address or the phone number for store 953 is. And unfortunately, when Amazon gets that, they can't accept it because even though it's a brand name, big box retailer, they're not going to go look up store 953 to figure out what's their phone number and their address, and they're just going to reject it.
They'll just reject the receipt as not valid proof of purchase. And for those who don't know, it doesn't happen very often, but it happens often enough that you definitely should be saving all the receipts for all of your reselling activity. When you go to stores and you buy products, make sure it's a detailed receipt, shows what you bought, what you paid, what store you got it from, because Amazon might ask for that as verification that it's a legitimate product that you're selling. So save your receipts, but also take a quick look at them as you're leaving the store and make sure the register was set up properly so that all the information you need is actually on the receipt. That's a great tip. I don't think in the 12 years plus I've been doing this, I don't think I've ever heard anybody bring that one up. I love it. That's a good tip, Jeff. Thanks.
Hey, you're most welcome. And Appreciate also, if get a receipt scanner. I can't say that enough. Yes. As people's volumes grow, it just makes sense. Get a receipt scanner because Amazon may want it, and it's way easier to type in, into your computer, pull up all Nike receipts from this time period than to be going one by one through the shoebox trying to find them. So.
Yes, absolutely. Great tip. As always, appreciate you, Jeff. Of course, we're talking to Jeff of jeffschick.com. He's a regular guest around here. Get over and see the great program that he has for this community. There's a link in the show notes actually as well. So you can go check out the offer that he has for all your Amazon policy and legal advice, man. Sure appreciate you. We'll have you back again real soon, okay?
Thank you. Appreciate it.
Thanks, Jeff.